Hi, and welcome to Careers in Clean Tech platform we've set up to try and provide some advice and support for those of you who are looking to get into the sector, or those of you who are already in the sector but are looking to progress your careers, looking at some of the things you can and should be doing to enhance your career. Today, we particularly want to focus on the future mobility or e-mobility sector, which clearly is one of the very vibrant markets at the moment. And for that purpose, I brought on one of our experts, Stephen Robinson, who heads the future mobility team at Hyperion Executive Search. Just to talk through some of the things that you could or should be looking out for. So, first of all, Steve, welcome to Careers in Clean Tech.
Thanks, David. Thanks very much for having me. Excited. First episode feature for myself.
Good. So, yeah, just broadly then, obviously there's a lot of interest in future mobility. We all see the headlines of what's going on. Perhaps you can share a little bit about sort of some of the hotter areas. We know it's quite hot in general. What types of parts of the sector are particularly vibrant at the moment, and also what types of jobs are really prevalent and sort of most sought after at the moment?
Yeah, really good question. I think approaching 3 years since I joined the Hyperion business, it's changed massively in such a short space of time. And I think if we look at the mobility landscape as a whole, it's changing vastly. I think for me, looking at that shift to electrification is huge, not just for individuals who are trying to move away with the 2030 ban coming on petrol diesel powered vehicles, trying to move away from let's say the dirtier pollutant vehicles into cleaner forms of mobility. I think naturally the front running technology is electric vehicles. So with that, there's different focus areas. There's the OEMs, the traditional OEMs who are trying to change what they've done forever, internal combustion powered vehicles into cleaner propulsion systems. So there's a lot of jobs within the automotive industry, if you like, actually building those new vehicles from the ground up or tweaking existing platforms with new propulsions. There's then the infrastructure side as well on both the private and the public sector. So, in terms of getting more people into vehicles, we've got to think about, for me, I'm probably one of the fortunate ones. I've got a driveway so I can have a charge point installed at the side of my home. There's a lot of people who don't have access to on-street parking, off-street parking, so they require heavily on the infrastructure in the public domain. So local authorities, the length and breadth of the country right now, being lobbied about more infrastructure being needed on street. So there's a lot of areas within the public sector right now. There's a lot of companies out there, many whom we're working with, who are working tirelessly to put that infrastructure in the ground. But then you look at fleets. You look at businesses. You look at anything from logistics companies to just companies that are trying to run a day-to-day operation. You look at the Amazons of the world. You look at the facilities management industries of the world. They can't just flip overnight. They need somehow to manage this transition and manage this transition quickly. So fleet managers of the world are probably looking at how they can navigate this challenge right now. So yeah, there's a lot of areas in which case there's a lot of skills required. And one thing that we're seeing an awful lot of, where there's perhaps a lot of transferability, is commercial domains, salespeople, good, hungry, driven salespeople who can sell solutions into the private sector or can work closely within the public sector in more of a consultative fashion and can work with central and local governments to guide them through this massive, let's be honest, it's a huge transition. You've then got, infrastructure, getting that infrastructure into the ground. So projects, operational people who can actually manage such complex installations and look at all the everything from liaising with DNOs, working with the national grid to make sure that the grid can cope and put this infrastructure in the ground. Everything around that really, and putting the infrastructure in the ground. Civils, electrical skill sets. I think there's going to be a massive shortage. We're already seeing it. There's a massive shortage of electrically biased project management professionals out there. People who can come in, who can manage projects of such scale. Yeah, it's super exciting, but I think it's super challenging as well. Let's not be be shy to that.
Sure. I think one of the key things for the audience is people who are in the sector. I mean, clearly there are, as you say, that many jobs across project management, sales, obviously a lot of software roles in the space as well. A lot of transition, as you say, particularly onto to fleets. So people who are involved in sort of fleets and logistics, there's opportunities for. I think like I said, there's a huge demand. But for those people who are the people that you are reaching out to and that are reaching out to you for jobs, for example, what are some of the things that they can or should be doing to make themselves attractive to employees in this space? What can they do? This is first of all, let's focus on people who are already partially in the sector and are looking for a step up. I mean, what are some of the things that they can do to make sure they end up on your radar or other recruiters and make themselves attractive to people who are looking for these types of roles?
Yeah, I think if you look at the demand across the sector right now for talent, it's through the roof. I think you and I have spoken in the past. There's essentially a war for talent, and it's how can you as a candidate differentiate yourself so you do stand out to potential employers, you do stand out to recruiters. There's not too many recruiters who have been doing has been specialist as long as Hyperion have, and have been purely working exclusively in the sector. But as we've seen in the 3 years that I've been in here, and since you founded the business back in 2014, there's a lot more. There's a lot more focus on the cleaner industries, the future technologies. So that's a good thing, the way I see it. With more specialist recruiters coming into the space, it's given more candidates an opportunity to speak to the right people to secure a chance of landing their dream role within clean tech. But equally, I think one thing that candidates can do is just be proactive, put themselves out there. So one thing I always encourage is, look at the forums that are out there. Look at there's things like the EV Cafe. If we look at the EV industry, where anyone can attend these webinars, these online sessions, debates, discussions, and really get to grips with what are the hot topics of the industry, what's happening. And you'll be surprised the amount of people that you meet in those types of settings and those types of forums who may just be looking for someone like you, may just be lacking those skill sets that you can offer. There's a lot of industry events, as we know. The likes of Fully Charged Outside, Fully Charged Live, which are open to the public. There's business to business days. There's days that are more geared towards just consumers who can come along, be invited to look at the different types of companies out there. You mentioned before the software. We've seen massively over the last couple of years that we're moving away from just hardware centric offerings. We're looking at what can we do to manage and optimize the charging, to make it easier for the fleet manager, to make it easier for me as an EV driver to charge cheaper and greener. So there's a lot of people that approach me that are in and around sort of the industry but aren't fully in it. We look at prop tech, we look at fintech, we look at clean tech, and I suppose just put yourselves out there. Talk about your passions. Write a blog, record a vlog, join some of the working groups that are on LinkedIn, that are on some of the social platforms. Attend some of the free events. Some of them are paid, some of them are very low cost, some of them are even free. Do your research, spend half an hour in the morning or during the evening looking at what industry events are coming up in the calendar year. And we've seen firsthand there's probably an event every week, so it's difficult to get to them all, but certainly there's a lot of good ones out there, which we've been to Move down in London, we've been to Fully Charged, as I mentioned, some of the online webinars with Green Fleet and some of the big industry outfits that are out there. There's so much that you can learn, and I think that's key. You can learn about what's happening in the industry, but you can also learn who are the key market movers, who are the the leaders within the space. And there's certain companies that you may not be aware of that aren't on your radar that pique your interest, which may encourage you to reach out.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's actually certainly that applies to people who are both in the sector and those who aren't. You can learning is always a good thing, and just like getting a better appreciation of what's going on. Putting yourself back into the shoes of yours and your team when you pick up a mandate and you have a search ongoing. Looking at LinkedIn's probably one of the main areas. Of course, it's not the only one, but it's an obvious area where people are visible. What sort of things should people be putting on their LinkedIn profiles? Because you go to some and it gives you chapter and verse that's really, really useful, and you go to others it's just got a company name and nothing else. So for you and your team, when they're doing the research into the marketplace, what could people do with their LinkedIn profiles to make themselves more visible and to make themselves more obvious for getting a tap on the shoulder from a headhunter like yourself and your team?
Yeah, good point. I think certainly if we take LinkedIn in the first instance, I think it's got to be clear, concise, snappy. It's got to be attention grabbing. If we as recruiters are looking for particular talents, we may view between 500 and 1,000 profiles within the first half of the day easily. So you've got to captivate us. You've got to stand out and put yourself in the best possible light. And that might be talking about, the 5-6 core responsibilities that you have in your role, dating back for the last 5 or 10 years. That whole myth of keep your CV to 2 pages. Whilst I agree in certain elements that you've got to be concise. Some people have a wonderful and a colourful career, and I encourage people to talk about that and make that visible on their profiles, on their resumes, on the CVs, whatever. But be concise. If you've achieved great things, talk about your achievements. If you have a desire and a passion to want to work in the clean tech or the EV sector, and you've had some involvement in those sectors, have a recap, have a refresh, have a run through your CV, have a recap, a refresh, a run through your LinkedIn profile. If you're not talking about them, then we as recruiters, we're not going to know that you've been involved in those types of projects. So make it visible. If you've delivered infrastructure, tell us about it. Pick those buzzwords, put those keywords. There's a lot of recruiters out there that will do general Boolean searches specifically within the sector that they're working in. So put in those keywords that are most relevant to you. We, again, as recruiters, we don't just look in the core sector. If you're an EV specialist recruiter, we look at closely aligned sectors. So perhaps if you're working in, we've done an awful lot recently where we've took people from the parking sector, the smart parking sector, who they've had a lot of experience putting infrastructure in the ground. They've got the software knowledge. They've got, the public sector or the private sector sales experience and projects experience. Not necessarily EV, but there's a lot of synergies. There's a lot of alignment there. So, talk about your passions. If I read someone's profile and it says, I'm deeply passionate about EV, this is what I've been up to, or even someone who talks about the passions and they haven't got experience, at least they're talking about how passionate they are. So that will trigger me to look a little bit deeper.
Yeah. Those are good points. I think there's 2 things there. One of which is going back to visibility, and this applies to people who aren't obviously in the sector as well. Is don't be assumptive that that somebody will tap on your shoulder and then you can send the CV, because where are they going to find you? And that's LinkedIn or various other places and events, as you've touched on, is a good place for that. But drawing out achievements, and whatever the job is, it's not just sales jobs that come with achievements. Project management, finance, operations, whatever you're doing, everybody wants someone who's done well at it. So whatever those achievements are, I think it's always a good case, as you've touched on, to showcase that. And going back to your point, if you're outside of the sector, then what are the transferable skills that you can talk about? Project management is an obvious one that we've already discussed. So I think those are key things. The other thing, of course, is not just recruiters, of which there are many that are looking at your profiles. Of course, a lot of companies now have in-house recruitment teams as well who are doing exactly the same thing. So if you're not on LinkedIn or in a visible place, then the chances of you getting a tap on the shoulder are far, far less. Maybe let's chat briefly, Stephen was talking about, on those first conversations when people do get a tap on the shoulder, be it from an internal recruiter or from an external recruiter like ourselves or a headhunter. What's the best way that they can respond or react, apart from politely? But how do they immediately pique your interest once you've reached out to somebody, you've seen on profile that they've got some key attributes or key skills and experiences that are relevant? The first conversation, how should people react? What sort of things should they be sharing or not sharing? How How do you like people to react?
Yeah, I think transparency is always key. Help us to help you. So, be open and honest, and be candid as much as you can in terms of where you're at right now. Essentially, if you've interacted or engaged with a live role that we've pushed out, or you've reached out to us directly and you want to know more about the role, there's certainly a level of interest there. We've piqued your interest somehow. So, what is it you're looking for in your next move? Be open and honest about your motivations. Where possible, be open and honest about some of the challenges or the frustrations. Tell us, what are the most important things for you in your role. And people have different motivations. For some people, it's monetary. We all want to live a nice lifestyle. Other people, it's about elevating their career. They've perhaps reached a certain ceiling in their current role, and they're not really getting the development and the career growth opportunities. So tell us, why are you interested? What are you looking for in your next move? And how can we help you? Equally, a good recruiter should be honest and open about the role, the core requirements, the nice to haves, the must haves, the critical elements of that role. So it works two ways. If you're upfront and candid with us, we'll be upfront and candid with you. And the hope is, I think with a lot of the companies in this clean tech, in this EV space, they're not big corporate beasts. Typically they are scale ups. There's a lot of, the industry's moving so quickly, but there's a lot of companies that are still in the earlier days. So it's perhaps more so about cultural fit in many cases. It's great that you can see that you've got the experience, you've got the track records, you've got the the ticks in the box from an experience standpoint. But what we want to see is the real you, and I suppose that ties into your resume and your LinkedIn profile and the way you interact, the way you engage in sort of the public domain. Be you. I know firsthand. I've joined Hyperion from a corporate environment where perhaps you follow a certain script or a way of talking. You present yourself in a certain way, but ultimately, potential employers want to get to know the real you. They want to get under your skin. They want to know what you love. They want to know what gets you out of bed every day. So be armed with your motivations and what you want in your next move. And if we can help you, then we'll help you. But if you are perhaps not painting a true picture or not, being honest with yourself, then you're perhaps not going to land that role that you so desire.
Yeah, I think those are key points really. Again, that honesty and openness. And again, let's be fair, recruiters don't always have the best reputation for that. And there are some of those companies out there, buyer beware. But there are plenty of good ones as well. And that honesty and integrity should cut both ways, because nobody wins if you blag yourself into a job that isn't right for you, because you don't win ultimately, and you won't be there for very long, and there's no winners. So I think that's a really interesting good point, Steve. Actually, is to think about, if you are going on a job search or you're at least open to a move, is to really think about what it is. What's the gap between where you are and where you want to be? What is it that's missing? And just be open and honest about that, and don't get sidetracked into some shiny job because of the salary. Like you said, we all want a better salary, but it's not all about that. So does it tick all of your other boxes? Does it suit your family circumstances? Does it suit your career aspirations? All this kind of stuff. So think that through in advance, I think, is always a good bit of advice.
Definitely, and one bit of advice I'll always give is, it's completely normal that you may not know where you want to be in your next move. There may be certain elements of your role that you love, and you want more of that in your next role. There may be certain elements of your role that perhaps you're not too fond of. But when you do that deep soul searching, often is the case that you still might not have a clear vision of where you want to be. That's fine. Have a conversation with us. Let us, throw a few ideas your way. With our industry knowledge, looking at your broader skill sets, we could perhaps come up with suggestions where, your skill sets could be added value. So I think the important advice is, don't expect to come away from a call with a recruiter, because a lot of people have never spoken to recruiters before, or they've been a one company person and they've not moved around too often. Don't expect to come away from that first phone call with you entering into a sort of a formal interview process and having to be committed to a particular hiring process. just enjoy the conversations. Enjoy the conversations. There's absolutely no obligation for you to jump 2 feet first into a role. Have a chat, reach out to people. If you are, more, let's say, more passive, you're not proactively looking out there, but perhaps there's a little bit of you that's sort of eating away, and you are curious to see what's out there. Pick up the phone and have a chat. I think there's a hesitancy to do that, and because the industry is moving so fast, before you know it, those opportunities might pass you by. I think, but the good thing is, because we're in such a fast moving sector, there's going to be dozens and dozens of opportunities. So I definitely encourage, if you're thinking about having that conversation with a recruiter, or having that conversation with a company directly that has really caught your eye, pick up the phone and have that conversation. It's done in complete confidence, and it can help. If anything, you may come away and you may learn something new.
Yeah, definitely keen to explore, or to explore, I should say, with the options that are out there. Hope that's been useful to everybody. What we've done is set up, as you may actually be seeing this, but if you haven't, you're seeing it on YouTube or on Facebook, we have a LinkedIn group called Careers in Clean Tech, where we've got an open forum. You can post any questions and there are any comments. Myself, Steve, or any one of the various people that are experts in different domains within clean tech will be able to answer your questions. So no obligation, but if you jump in there, got any questions, we'll try and respond as quick as we can, give you whatever advice we can, because for us it's all about getting as many people as possible into the right roles, into the clean tech sector, so we can drive all of this stuff forward. So if we can't help you directly, then hopefully we can help you indirectly through this kind of channel and advice. So make sure you do. There's a Careers in Clean Tech YouTube channel, but the best place to get actual content and responses is the Careers in Clean Tech group on LinkedIn. But thanks, Steve, for your insights, and hope to hear from some of you soon.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, David.